So this is kind of an impromptu talk that I decided needed to happen because I see really inaccessible stuff on the web all the time. And just this last week, I saw a website that was very popular, and I decided that because it was popular but it was inaccessible, it was worth talking about it a little more. So I'm going to talk about keyboard accessibility. And I'm Marcy Sutton. I'm a developer at Substantial in Seattle, which is a 60-ish person product development studio. And I build websites and mobile apps there. It's not really an accessibility shop, but I add accessibility to all of my projects whenever I can. So out of any of us, have any of us broken an arm before? Have you ever broken your arm? Have you ever run out of batteries in your mouse and had to use your keyboard? All right.
Or it's Bluetooth or something and you can't use it.
So you have a reason maybe that you can't use a mouse. What about if you're vision impaired or blind? I mean, you guys are looking around the room, so that doesn't seem likely, but maybe you know somebody that is. All of a sudden, you find that you can't use the mouse, and it really sucks when somebody hasn't taken the time to enable the keyboard. It doesn't have to be that way either. We can make things accessible with a little bit of effort. So because this is an impromptu talk, I'm just going to do some demos, and we can see what happens. So the first demo I want to do is of Whitehousegov. It's actually, it has some alternative text in it. It's not the worst for accessibility, but for keyboards, it's pretty awful. When I first looked at this site, I was using a mouse so I could go around the website and see these big hover menus. But if I start tabbing through the website, I get a dotted outline around the logo and some visual feedback, but not much. And then I get lost. I don't know where I am. I can look down at the status bar and see that the URL is changing, but I have no visual feedback. If I go back into the menu, where am I? I don't even know where I am. Video. I happen to know that the video link is in the Photos and Video tab of the hover menu. All they had to do was enable this menu from the keyboard. It might have taken some CSS, or it would definitely be some CSS. It might have taken a little bit of JavaScript, but it's really not rocket science to make this work with the keyboard. That's one pretty simple example that there's no reason for it. Like, you could make that work a lot better. So I mentioned a website that people have been talking about a lot that they were all, oh, wow, look at how they streamlined the workflow to buy a plane ticket. Compared to United.com, it's so many screens less to make it through this workflow. But the website is not accessible. It's pretty bad. So it's Virgin America. It's their beta website. I get that it's a beta site. I don't want to be too harsh on them because I know that things are a work in progress. But given all of the polish and the, yay, we made it more fun to navigate, but then the blatant disregard for a keyboard or a screen reader is really unfortunate. So when I first looked at the site, I started tabbing around the page. And again, I see the status bar changing at the bottom, but I have no visual feedback. I have no idea what's going on here. If I hover, I get some feedback, but nothing if you want to use a keyboard at all. And so it's really a bummer. When I test a website like this, I have a couple different tools. See, can we hear that? I turn on VoiceOver on my Mac just by hitting Command F5.
You are currently on a link inside of a list. To click this link, press Control, Option, Space.
So I can test it with a screen reader to see what would a blind person get. So I'm going to reload the page.
HTML 90% loaded.
So I can see some visual feedback, but if I'm really using VoiceOver,
Level 1 inside of HTML content.
if I'm using VoiceOver, it doesn't matter if I can see it. So I'm just going to start tabbing.
Link, Virgin America.
OK, they put some text there, even though it's like an image logo. That's good.
Link, book, list 3 items.
OK, so they've got some text. I'm going to keep tabbing.
Link, feed, link, flight alerts. Link, about elevate. Link, sign in. Link, Sign up. Link. San Francisco.
Okay, hold on. There were buttons there. There were these radio buttons, right?
Currently on a link inside of HTML content.
How come I
click
can't
this
get to
link,
those?
Press Control Option Space.
If I click one of those buttons, it actually, you can use the mouse, but you can't use the keyboard.
They can't even receive focus, it looks like.
No, you can't. Like, nothing on here can receive focus. It's a real bummer.
Round trip. One way.
Ah, so when I use the mouse to get the focus there, then all of a sudden I can get to it, but who's going to do
You are
that?
currently on a text element inside of a list. Multi-city. San Francisco. Link. List 6 items. Boston boss. Link.
So sometimes VoiceOver reads things out a little funny, but
You are
we
currently
can
on a
see what
link
they mean.
Inside of a list. To click this link, press Control Option Space. Actions menu. 2 items.
Oop, I'm a VoiceOver newbie. I don't use it all the
Link.
time.
Boston boss. VoiceOver off.
So you can use VoiceOver on your Mac, on your iPhone. You can also install VirtualBox on a Mac, and then you have access to Internet Explorer, which you can use JAWS, which is the most widely used screen reader. You can actually get a demo version that's free of JAWS. I didn't know that until recently. It's a really good testing tool. You can use it for 40 minutes at a time, unrestricted, and it's a really good way to test the most widely used screen reader. You can also get Firefox, obviously on any platform, but you can get NVDA for free for Windows, which you can use through VirtualBox. Those are a few of the tools that I use to test these things. But as far as keyboard access goes, with the Virgin America site, I just started tabbing through it, and I could see that it had a blatant disregard for focus styles and tabbable elements. So being a curious developer, I opened the DevTools just to see what kind of code did they use here. So if I go back to the home page here, it is an Angular app. Lovely. Which, on its own, it's not Angular's fault that it's inaccessible. It's just really unfortunate that they didn't make things work from the keyboard. So some of these items that I couldn't focus on, I want to see what those are made of. So there's actually an anchor in here. It's maybe not the most semantic element for it to be an anchor if it has an empty href value, but I'll grant them at least it has text in it. But since I can't tab onto the thing, it's a real bummer. I think you can tab onto it, you just don't get any visual feedback, so you don't know which element you're on, which there's actually, you could argue that screen reader usage is a smaller number of your overall audience, but keyboard usage is huge. And I think the only reason that we don't do it more is because the experience sucks, and we can give up, so we do. So for the Virgin America website, all they really had to do was define the focus style along with the hover style, and they didn't do that. And it's super easy to do. So you can easily find this stuff out just by opening the DevTools and tabbing through a web page and see what kind of an experience you get. So I'm going to go back to my little slides here. So that's a bummer, right? People are launching these beautiful sites. They get all this fanfare, like, woohoo, it's a shorter workflow to buying a plane ticket, unless you're on a keyboard or a screen reader, and that's a huge bummer. But there are some websites that do it a little better. Nothing's perfect, but one that I like a lot, and I'll admit I'm a little biased because I worked on it, but Target's corporate website. Everything that they build has to be accessible, and so this was a really fun project to get to take a beautiful brand and make something really interactive and accessible. So for this site, there were some really key features I wanted to add, including skip links, so I can jump to major parts of it. So for this, we have 3 skip links. I'm going to go to the main navigation. And I can skip right by, unlike the White House website where we tabbed on the main nav items and we were forced through all of those off-screen links. In this case, I skip right on by, even though if I hit enter, it expands and it shows me more items, and then I can tab in. So from a keyboard or screen reader experience, I am basically creating a one-to-one, whether you're using the mouse or the keyboard. So if I have the mouse, I can hover over, and then if I want to pin it, then it works on a tablet. It works on a desktop with a keyboard or a mouse. And I even wired up the escape key, which is really awesome, so that anytime you have something open, you can just hit escape and get out of it. So if I go back to our skip links, now I'm jumped down into the content, and I can start tabbing around. And these tiles were really cool, too, because I can tab onto them, hit enter, it flips onto the backside, and then I can go to this link. Otherwise, if that was off screen because the tile isn't flipped yet, I don't want to be forced onto some link that I can't see, because then I have no idea what it goes to. In this case, I can flip the tile, then I get to the backside of it, and if it has a link, then I can go to it. So that's pretty cool. So now I can go to that link. So this website was a really good opportunity to keep the design appeal up and not have to compromise too much for the sake of accessibility. And I think we can create really interesting UI patterns and not have to sacrifice access. So one other example that I've been working on recently, and this is a really fun app to work on, it's called Distiller. And it's actually a whiskey recommendation engine. And when I got onto this project, it's not that it wasn't supposed to be accessible or that people didn't want it to be, it's that they just didn't know any better. And I think that's the case for a lot of websites, is that we tend to develop for ourselves, and we don't really remember that there's people who can't see or can't use a mouse. So for the whiskey site, Distiller, I really wanted to make it accessible, because how cool is it to go and have a shelf of your favorite whiskeys online? I think that's pretty cool. And I have blind friends who think that's pretty cool. We have a feature we'd love to add. I don't know logistically how or when this will happen, but getting whiskey delivered to your house would be pretty fantastic, especially if you are blind and you can't go to the store. Like, heck yeah, I think a lot of people could see the appeal of that. So for Distiller, we actually added a feature where you can reorder the bottles on your top shelf. And it's a drag and drop feature. I'm actually going to open the version of it on my machine because I don't think it's been deployed yet. So when I started working on this, oh, and my localhost content is not whiskey related. But this had a mouse-only drag and drop feature, and I thought it would be really important to make that accessible. I asked around to a few friends, and making drag and drop accessible is a non-trivial task. I actually don't even know how you would do that. So I just kind of reused some of the same functionality, but enabled it with the keyboard. So in this case, I added some skip links, which we have in the top left corner. I think those are the ones that haven't been deployed yet. But it jumps you into the content. I want to jump you farther into the content because I still have these links on the left side that I need to tab through. But these were not accessible at all before. Like, I think you could tab onto them, but they didn't have any visual feedback, so you had no idea where you were. So now, I have a list of 3 bottles on my top shelf. And if I want to reorder them, the way that I would do it before is I would click this button that says reorder bottles. And I get a little draggable icon, like in this case, we're using the hamburger icon to tell you that you can move it. And we're using a little jQuery sortable plugin. Every time that you drag something on your list, it actually rips out the DOM and then replaces it, and so your focus is lost. That's something that I'm doing a lot of research on with JavaScript MVCs right now, because this is a pretty widespread problem. It's not unique to this website. I think the Virgin America Angular site probably had similar problems. I didn't even have to dive in that far to find problems. But in this case, something that we'd implemented, it needed help, and that's okay. It's something that we can improve. So for this I made it so you can tab onto the button, which was a big improvement, and you can hit enter on it, and because it was ripping the button out too, you would lose focus. So now it sends you back onto the button, and I can toggle it to turn this edit mode on and off. So now I can tab onto the list, and I actually get feedback that tells me which item I'm on, and it makes it actually usable. So if I use the arrow keys, I can reorder it. And in a screen reader,
Voiceover on Chrome. Profile vertical line distiller window. Bottle 2 of 3 Bushmills to 1-year-old use arrows to reorder. Button has keyboard focus.
so I added links or text off screen to tell you where it is.
Bottle 1 of 3 Bushmills to 1-year-old use arrows to reorder. Button list 5 items.
So when it reorders,
Voiceover off.
it actually updates the number that's off screen. So it'll dynamically count how many there are, and right now I have 3 out of 5. It will, out of how many bottles you have on your top shelf right now, it will count them up, put the number in, and then for whichever item whatever index that is in the list, it will update it as you move the list. Without that, you don't have enough context to know, what the heck is this thing and how do I move it? I don't know. Like, what number is it? I mean, we would go through all this trouble to make this list resortable with the arrows, and you'd have no reason why. You probably wouldn't even use it. So this is one feature that I really got to hammer on and improve the accessibility of, and I think it turned out pretty good. There's a lot more work we have to do to this app because of the way that the DOM gets ripped out and re-rendered. Like, some pages you aren't notified when the page changes. Like, say I go to my collection, at least in VoiceOver.
Voiceover on.
I'll do that again.
Expert whiskey recommendations vertical line distiller window. 2 items. Marcy Sutton. Profile. Accessibility is rad. Share collection. There's open space on your collection. Want some ideas? Get a recommendation. Link. Search for whiskey. Link group has keyboard focus.
So it doesn't actually tell me when the page changes when I click to a tab.
You are currently on a group inside of HTML content. To interact
No idea.
with items in this group, press Control, Option, Shift, down arrow.
What I did do, on the other hand, though, that's part of the way there.
Visited link. Cert. Visited link. Visited link. Sign out. Visited link. My top shelf. List 2 items. Visited link. My collection current page.
The thing I did that got it part of the way there
Voiceover off.
is making it say current page. So I have some visual feedback that tells me it's like that's the current thing, but otherwise I have no idea. So I added text off screen that changes when you change the page. In VoiceOver, it doesn't tell me when the page changes, so that's something I'd like to add. But in JAWS on Internet Explorer on Windows, it actually does pick up the change. And that's the most widely used screen reader. So that's pretty cool. I was happy to find that out. It was actually a really smooth experience. I can actually show that, what that looks like. So VirtualBox is a free VM that you can download, and you can get all these different versions. I have an IE11 version. And with that, you can go and grab any browser. Like I said earlier, the free demo version of JAWS is a really sweet way to test the stuff.
USA.
So JAWS,
Tab row. Hanky Bannister original blend bottle.
actually this is NVDA.
Back toggle. Home. Favorites.
I'm gonna go kill that.
NVDA.
Get out of there.
Notification overflow.
This one reads everything as you hover on it.
Running app. Bushmills 21-year-old. Running app. No. NVDA.
Yes, quit. So I can open JAWS just like a normal application. It's an application that runs on top of a screen reader, which is super interesting. Like, when I first got into accessibility, there was some mystery about what JAWS is, how it works. I actually didn't know they had a free demo version until a few months ago. And it's unrestricted. You can use it for 40 minutes at a time. Oh, doesn't want to let me open it. Come on, JAWS, hook us up.
JAWS dialog.
Oh,
OK button.
let's reboot. Sorry, guys. All right, well, I think that experiment's maybe not gonna work.
Profile Distiller, Internet Explorer button, tooltip.
I should have
Profile
planned that a little
Distiller.
better. Well, one thing that we could do is go back to either Distiller or there's actually more to the Virgin America site that I thought was really interesting. So I turned VoiceOver on last night and started navigating to see what, beyond just the keyboard stuff, what would happen.
VoiceOver on Chrome, Virgin America window, Virgin America HTML content has keyboard focus.
So I'm just gonna like close my eyes and try to use this thing and see what happens.
You are currently on link, Virgin America, link.
I happen to know where the stuff is.
Link, flying with us. Link, where we fly. Link, fees. Link, flight status. Link, flight alerts. Link, visited link. Link, San Francisco.
Okay, I'd like to go to San Francisco.
You are currently on a link inside of HTML content.
Okay, so the page
Press
changed.
Control, Option, Space.
I'm on a new page, I happen to know because I can see it, but I had no idea that the page changed. So that's the problem I was talking about with Distiller, that we don't know when the page changes. So we need a little bit of help to notify the user. So say I pick a city, no idea, I didn't get any feedback. Maybe I want to go to Portland. There was a notification at the top of the screen that said something, and I don't know what that is. So actually, I handled that in Distiller just this last week.
2 items. Marcy Sutton. Profile. Accessibility is rad. Share collection. There's open space on your collection. Want some ideas? Get a recommendation. Link. Search for whiskey. Link group.
So I'm going to sign out, and I'll get a similar notification.
Expert whiskey recommendations. Vertical line Distiller. HTML content. 41%. 4. You are now signed out.
All right, so that's something that they could do on that site to make that better.
VoiceOver off.
And the technique that I used is called ARIA Live Regions. This isn't so much CSS related, but it's a really basic HTML thing that you can do where you basically, you're watching an element. And if you put ARIA live and then an attribute, in this case I put assertive, and that says, hey, whatever you're reading, this is the most important thing. And it actually had a property called rude before, because it's supposed to be rude. Like, hey, stop what you're doing, read this thing. And in the case of an alert box, something that needs to be read right away, that's useful. So actually, we can go and inspect that in Distiller and see what it looks like. So in this case, here we have a div that says ARIA Live Assertive. And what that means is when the page loads, it's watching for changes. So all I have to do is append content into it, and it will read it. So let's do a little experiment. I know I have jQuery on this page, so I'm actually going to go look for it. ARIA Live Assertive. Okay, so I have a hold of an element. I'm going to get this prepped so that it won't be hearing all the typing in VoiceOver. But if I append something to it, I really hope this works.
VoiceOver on Chrome. Expert whiskey recommendations. Vertical line Distiller. Window. $. Expert whiskey recommendations. Vertical line Distiller. HTML group. Editable. Expert whiskey recommendations. Vertical line Distiller. HTML content. VoiceOver off.
Well, I don't think that worked. And I wonder why. That's really interesting. So it actually has the content in the div that I appended it to, but it didn't read it. And I would argue that that's probably a limitation of VoiceOver, because I had a lot of trouble getting that to work as well. And I found sometimes it was as buggy as leaving the browser and coming back, and then it would work. So that ended up, being really challenging. So I would recommend looking into ARIA Live for these types of applications. And that can improve notifying a user when something is changing. Because as we saw with this site, the Virgin America site, not only did it have a lot of keyboard access problems, but there's really a lack of notification. So it's really some user experience issues. Do you guys have any questions?
I'd like to go, if you have some spare time, go back to the target site. Just talk about a little bit of the implementation that you, or like how you accomplished the implementation of some of the things that you did.
Sure.
Like with my experience in doing this, you end up with a lot of, I haven't found any good library to manage these interactions and the states that are present, especially when you start using JavaScript to like look at key codes for like return or enter versus escape. Like where does the escape focus apply, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Put the caret in the search box as you had one of those menus open and then you hit escape. Like would it close both and unfocus the search box?
Oh, yeah. So for that, so here I have the panel open. I tend to put escape on the body so that I'm always listening for it. So that way I could be somewhere else. Like, so the use case here is the keyboard. If I skip to the navigation, navigation. Let me go back to the top. I went all the way to the footer. So if I go to the navigation and I'm on this nav, and then I keep going maybe, because if I click off, it'll close it. But I'm anywhere on the document and I hit escape, I want to be listening for it. Whereas if I'm scoped to something in the nav with jQuery or some other way of binding that event, if I'm scoped in too far, then I won't actually fire the event. And we like to use event delegation anyway and target elements in a different way. So for the escape key in particular, I like to scope to the body. I had one other thing quickly. It sounds like we should wrap up, but I threw together a little gist of the code I use for the Distiller sorting for the top shelf stuff. And for that, I made a really simple little JavaScript object for the key codes so that I could basically put those really magic numbers that, like when you hit the escape key in the event object, you get returned the number, the key code. So rather than having those sprinkled throughout my code, I put those all in one configurable document, and then I can just reference it with like some variable name. That's one way to make that better. And then I'm always listening to the escape key, and I can check which key code it was, because you're actually listening to any key event, but you only want to do something if the condition is right. And those conditions are, was it the escape key? And am I on the right page? Am I sorting?
What is the, what do you do with, so it almost seems like what you're doing is your approach is to translate key presses into somewhat more semantic events and then trigger those. And
Yeah.
see if there's, you trigger that on like the current target, or maybe on the event target, let it bubble and see if anything wants to respond to it.
Totally.
How you do that?
Yeah, so for this on Top Shelf, we listen for the escape key and then we trigger an event, and that's an app level event. So that way we are always firing the event, and then whether or not the listener is bound and it will actually do something about it, it makes it so that you don't have all this logic buried in an event handler. You actually have it like moved into some other easy to maintain place. And then this sortable list observer is only dealing with like the guts of the sortable list, and then it hands off the like starting and stopping of the disable sorting event is actually in a different object.
Yeah, I guess the one like problem that I'm really getting at is a good example of this would be if you had like an input text box and you're pressing like left and right to move the caret throughout the text that you've already entered.
Yeah.
A lot of sites will also like maybe have a carousel behind that.
Oh, yeah.
Or
In that case, you would probably want to scope it using delegation, like make sure that you're actually on the right thing. Like actually on this gist, I have some events bound here, and I'm listening to the body, but then I'm diving down into anything that has a data behavior of sort handle. So that's agnostic to the type of tag. It just looks for the sort handle, which is only available after you push the sorting button. Because it rips the DOM in and out, it's actually not even present, but the event is always listening. And when that condition is true, then it will do stuff.
and key down is
So thanks for showing up.
I was curious, like,
Yeah.
try to do this to poor effect so many times.
Yeah, so key press and key down, there are slight differences in which keys are available. So you have to do a little monkeying around. Cool, thanks.